Hi and welcome to Filmarket Hub Talks. My name is Rosalind and I'm the UK manager, and I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome online today Nish Panchal, who is an agent at Curtis Brown, where he represents screenwriters and filmmakers. Nish, welcome and thank you so much for coming online today. It's wonderful to have you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's brilliant. And you are also part of the jury of this year's 2021 English language screenwriting competition.
I'm excited.
Fantastic. Yeah. So really that closes on the 18th of March. So if anyone's watching who's got a great pilot they want to submit, you've still got a bit of time. So Nish, can I start by asking you, I know that you used to work at BBC Films in development and then you moved to become an agent. Could you tell us a little bit about that journey and what inspired you to become an agent?
I think I just fell into it. When I worked at the BBC, it was a kind of assistant role that I had there, and I was just trying to find my feet in the industry and know what it was that I wanted to do. And I'd spent a couple of years there in development and working with brilliant writers, and just thought that I was up for a new challenge, but I didn't quite know what that challenge was. All I knew was that I didn't want to be on set because I just really didn't enjoy the stress of being on set. So I then decided, actually a friend said to me that I was working with, said, why don't you go and work at an agency? I worked at an agency, and if you don't know what you want to do after working in an agency, you probably will find your niche. So I spent some time there, and funnily enough, within a year and a half, I was made an agent. So maybe it found me.
Fantastic. And could you tell us a little bit about, for you personally, what does the agent talent relationship, can you tell us a bit about that and how it works for you in terms of how you find talent and how you kind of nurture them?
Yeah, well, in terms of finding them, it's mainly, I'd say, recommendations that I get from either other clients or producers, or via professional relationships that we have. Or it's, rarely, but it does happen, I've had writers write to me out of the blue and just give me a brief update of what they've been up to and an outline of what they're writing. And if I'm bored that particular week, and if I'm not drowning in other submissions and I feel good about my reading pile, then I would just dip into a script or two. And I've done it actually twice now in the last couple of years. I've done that, and I've signed a writer just out of the blue from someone who's just written to me. So it happens rarely, but it does happen.
Fantastic.
They hit a sweet spot, I think, for me. Worked.
And you've got a really unique list of talent that you work with. What was it that stands out for you when you are taking on a client? What is it you look for?
You've never really know how to put that into a sentence. There's a lot of different things. I think mainly it's about a clarity of voice, something to say about the world. A client of mine always talks about, a director client actually talks about Trojan horsing, where you have a message to say in the work that you make, and but you put it in an entertaining way, so the audience aren't really aware of what they're watching until the end, until they've watched it, and then they realize what it's actually about. I think that's a really good way of putting it. I quite like stories with a powerful message, but told in an entertaining way, or something to say about the world. That's also entertaining as well, because it is, at the end of the day, we're making entertainment, right? Absolutely,
that's a brilliant example. I love that.
Yeah.
And just kind of moving more towards sort of TV writing. When you're reading a TV pilot, what would you say are the most important components for that to be a successful pilot?
Well, I wish it was that easy to put them down. I think it's mainly about just a good story. I know that sounds cliche, but it's a good story, and those are hard or easy to find. I think essentially what you want to have is a good story that's well told. So the good story part is the luck part, the well told part is the skill part. So having a strong introduction to a character and a world, or a precinct that is either a familiar precinct, like police station or a hospital or something that's not so familiar is good. And then just showing that you can set up that world and those characters, the lead character and supporting characters in 60 pages, 60 to 30 pages if it's a half hour, or 60 pages. If you can demonstrate that you can do those, it doesn't even have to be the most wild story. It could just be a well-told script, because that's what we're looking for. That's what I'm looking for in a script. Is, can someone write to acts? Can someone write something that has the ups and downs of emotion and action and go on a ride? And then I suppose you want to end on a cliffhanger. That sounds a bit too dramatic, but some kind of reveal or something that would make me want to read the second episode and know what happens to these characters that you've set up.
That's great. Yeah.
Not that much to ask.
Not that much, but it's hard to do, isn't it? To tell that story in a way that is convincing, authentic, but also entertaining. All those components together. And
there's those are like the headline parts, and then you have things like what's the text saying? Where are we? What are we seeing? And then what's the subtext of that? What's the deeper meaning? What's the thing that's going to hit an audience on a primal level? Is the thing that just elevates it to a different level.
Brilliant. And as someone who has their finger on the pulse in terms of, both what filmmakers and writers are creating right now, but also what the industry is looking for, would you say have you seen sort of a certain type of project coming through that might be able to sort of project what's going to be coming to our screens in the next 12, 24 months? And would you say that lockdown has inspired in some way a certain type of story, or are we going to be seeing very different?
I think in lockdown 1 there was a lot of talk of, should we be writing dystopian lockdown stories? And it's not really come that way. I think the things that have really been uplifting and or hits during this time are things like It's a Sin. Actually was a real pleasure to watch, and I know it's done amazing numbers on Channel 4 and on HBO. And I think the vibe is that it's been a bleak year and everyone's just looking for some escapism, and everyone's looking for something that's hopeful and optimistic rather than too much bleakness. That being said, I think The Serpent did really well on the BBC as well, and that was a real hit for the channel. So, and that was very bleak, a serial killer who kind of stalks backpackers in the Far East. So who knows? I don't know. But what I would say is noisy material is always the thing that's going to stand out. And especially now in the UK, we've got the domestic channels, so BBC, ITV, 4, 5, Sky, but we've also got Netflix, Amazon, HBO, the big streaming services are all just kind of rushing to make announcements that are going to kind of make their channel stand out more than their competitors. And I think the noisier the better is not the way I would say it, but it's definitely the way that the tide is going.
Interesting. So would you say it's quite hopeful in terms of the level of development that's taking place right now in the UK, in terms of the amount of content you need for writers?
There's never been a better time to be a writer, because for us anyway, as I just said, we have a limited number of buyers that we could sell our projects into, and that meant, and there was a lot of production companies, but only so few buyers, and crucially slots, because in the old days it would be, this is going to be BBC at 9 p.m. or this is ITV at 10 or whatever. So now that there is no slots to fill and you have the option to go onto a streaming channel, that means that there could be so much more development that actually does go into production. So I would say there is, and shows like I May Destroy You and Normal People have shown that BBC Three have a real appetite for material and have a strong audience that will show up for the right material as well. I would say it's never been a better time to be a writer, and to be a writer who's in active development is great. And then to add to that, you've also just got more, it's more common now for productions to have writers' rooms. Yeah. So whereas before you'd really struggle to try and find a place on a show, either you're writing an episode or you're not. Now a great entry point into the industry and into writing television is to sit in a writer's room or a Zoom, basically this, in your living room. But it's great education. We've had a few writers start out in writers' rooms and have had amazing experiences, and now are off writing episodes of shows. It's good, and it all comes down to you earning a living as a writer.
Absolutely, and all that experience in writers' rooms, just to learn the process as well. Even if you're script editing or you're a junior writer, I mean, it's an extraordinary experience.
Yeah, you're learning by being with others who are going to elevate your knowledge, and hopefully will elevate your knowledge and your skill set.
Definitely. Would you say that that we're going to see more and more of that in the UK? I know that's far more common in the US to have writers' rooms. Do you feel that's a trend that's coming to Europe? We're sort of definitely seeing it in Europe as well. Would you say that's coming to UK more?
Yeah, I think it's already here. The biggest shows like Sex Ed have a huge writers' room. Hannah has a writers' room. Like all of the big series do have writers' rooms to kind of I think it expedites the process of development as well. When everyone's there in a room and everyone's engaged on what the series arcs are going to be for the different characters from the very beginning, you can kind of go away, write your outline, and come back with an episode. I've seen it work really well, and I do think it's a good way to create and be collaborative, and I think we're probably going to see a lot more of it. The converse too is also true, is that there are so many shows now which are just kind of 4-5 parters that are kind of from a singular voice, and I think those shows are just those shows are getting made as well at the same time, and they will never go away. But I like the fact that we can now have some kind of different routes to production.
Mm-hmm. It's really exciting.
Yeah.
Coming back to any advice that you might be able to give emerging writers, could I ask you to give some thoughts to people out there who might be thinking, I've written some scripts, I've had some good feedback, really want to get an agent. Any advice you could give them in terms of approaching an agent, or where to start, what they should be kind of looking for? I know when you're starting out, it's harder to get your material in front of people, but any advice you could give emerging writers?
There are, places like Filmarket are great, obviously, and writing competitions are really good, and there are so many of them now, and I think that just helps. That kind of helps the writer also just know that their work has been read by other people and has good feedback. I think that's a real key thing, is just knowing in yourself. It's such a solitary thing, right? But just knowing in yourself that other people have read it objectively, not family or friends, have read it and enjoyed it and thought that there's a home for it, or thought there's some merit in it, is a real positive. So getting other people to read it, and Filmarket's great because there's affiliation to business people as well. So that's obviously a draw and has a certain level of experience there, where we know what we kind of know. I think I know what I'm doing. I've been told I know what I'm doing. So that's a good thing. Writing competitions, just watching as much TV as possible, keeping your finger on the pulse of what's getting made, who's making it, in terms of the writer or writers, the producers, and also who's financing it. Is it a show that's being financed by the US, or is it a domestic project, or all of those things kind of they kind of dispel what the myth around the industry is, because there isn't really any science or magic to it. It's more like you just have to know how the recipe is being cooked, really. So I would say doing a little bit of the business research and understanding who makes what, understanding why things get made. That's a lot of my job, but I think if you're a writer trying to make something that's going to get made, you want to have a sense of where the trends are and what people are looking for and why shows do get made. So in the UK, there's always been a really big importance on, I guess, building on the brand of a book. Something like Normal People is obviously going to get made. Dolly Alderton is a huge author and has got television shows in development because of that. So reading books is always a good way to get in, and that's very competitive. And as a writer, you might not have the resources to kind of put up all that money to option a book, but looking at those books and seeing where the trends are there, and also who's paying for those shows that are being made, and then unique voices. Normal People was based on a book. Michaela Cole is certainly a unique voice, and her show was a runaway hit as well. Those two shows actually really kind of speak to what this year has been, in a way.
I loved Normal People. I thought it was so beautifully executed. It just had hooked me straight away. It's fantastically written.
Yeah, and I don't know if anyone will really know if it was about the time and place that we were all just stuck in lockdown and we had the time to kind of binge that whole show back to back, and if it had been distributed in any other way, would it have found the audience? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of the quality of it is obviously at the highest level, but there are so many shows that are at that level of quality that don't always get recognized as well. So it's a little bit of science and magic at the same time.
Definitely. And could you tell us a little bit about how you work with your clients, in terms of, if they've got something they're working on, how much feedback do you give them? What's your sort of working relationship like with your clients?
It's kind of as collaborative as they want it to be. I mean, obviously we're working together all the time on projects, or they're running ideas by me for the most part. Writers would be sending me pitches or short synopses or articles and links to true stories and saying, is there something in this? And you should say, go away and develop it a bit more and then try and find a home for it. I think as an agent, we're probably we're like that first quality, like line of quality control, where if I can see that there's the seed of something good in it, I'd say that you should probably flesh this out, and then we can go and set it up with a production company. And once it's set up with a production company, I think that's usually when I step back and let the experts do what they do best. But in terms of what we do identify as agents is, we're speaking to broadcasters, financiers, and producers all the time. So we have a sense of what people are looking for, and that's where my kind of I suppose curation part of the job comes into it, where I can say, well, this kind of idea is really not the thing that people want to see now, or there's already a show that's in development or that's being made, so this probably won't go because they might be too similar. I know true stories are always a big thing. So when the GameStop story came out earlier this year, a few clients had asked about that. And there was like 3 other announcements for GameStop. There was a feature, there were 2 TV shows. So those kind of big stories get eaten up quite quickly. But and it's our job to kind of know what's being developed as well. So I would say it's a little bit of that curation and leaning into what makes the idea good before we then find the right home for it.
So, I mean, I kind of ran out of questions because you covered everything so brilliantly. I don't know if I asked you all I did. There was one question I was going to ask you, which I didn't. Is there anything you see, like a common mistake that kind of emerging writers or new writers make in terms of their pilots or their episodes?
It's not a common mistake. I just think that as an agent, you can only really go with the trends of what the market wants. Like, I know I sound like a complete businessman and with no artistic integrity, but as an agent, you really can just go with what the market wants. And sometimes if you could have written the best historical epic, and the market doesn't want a historical epic right now, because they're very tough to make. And right now with coronavirus budgets, it's really hard to get a show with big scale, big period piece off the ground, because at the moment everyone's kind of making smaller productions and just trying to get them financed. So if the market isn't responding to that right now, that's not a reflection of the writer's writing. I think that's the thing where I would say emerging writers might feel like they're that negativity or your project not being picked up is a personal slight against your writing or you as a person or the script that you have to tell. But it's often not that. But 99% of the time it's because of just market reaction and what buyers are looking for at the time. So I would always say, if you think it's good, if you've kind of had other people's responses and feedback and they say it's good and you believe in your writing, then you don't feel disparaged by any knockbacks. And also, I'd say understand the reason why you wrote that project. So say you did have a big epic period piece and the market just wasn't looking for a show about the Tudors right now. If you can at least go into a meeting and talk about what compelled you to write that and why you wanted to write that specific show and why you think it's important, you can demonstrate to a producer that you have that awareness of what it takes for a show to be made, or why a show is important to make, or where you're coming from. And just that level of thinking also just puts you into a whole different realm of, okay, this person understands. And then that means next time when you get a steer that, we're not looking for a Tudor piece, but we could do with like a futuristic sci-fi piece, then you can bring that thinking and say, okay, well, I know what I need to do here because that's what the market wants. And this is the kind of themes that I want to be exploring, and let's put them together.
Brilliant.
Yeah, that would be my advice there.
That's really, really cool. Would you advise writers to be working on a number of ideas at the same time, just to keep their
definitely. Definitely don't put all your eggs in one basket. That is never a good thing. So, have a feature. If you're into writing for film and TV, have a feature spec that you're working on. Have a couple of TV ideas. I always tell my clients to have one spec pilot that they're working on, even if they have other projects in development, because it kind of, it will, the development process will probably just kill you sometimes, and it takes all the fun out of your show that you really wanted to work on. You're like passion piece show that you've set up somewhere, and you're just going through endless drafts and endless drafts. Eventually you're going to be so frustrated that the love of it might just die. So having something else that reminds you of why you love writing is always a good thing.
That's fantastic advice. Oh, brilliant. I guess finally, any advice you would give to the writers thinking of submitting to the competition this year?
No, just go for it. I think if you believe in your work, and if you think it's good, and if you've done, some of the things I've said about market research and knowing there's a home for it, if you're aware of what shows the BBC are picking up, say that. And if you're aware of what Netflix want and all of this, if you can see a home for the show, I think it's worth you kind of putting that into it and making sure that's clear. And then just submit the work, make sure that it's hitting all the beats and the episode is working. I would say that.
Well, thank you. It's been absolutely brilliant to have you today. Thank you for your amazing advice and your time. And we're
welcome.
I'll have you on the jury for this year, and wish you all success with your clients' current projects.
Thank you very much. Hope you have a good day.
Thank you so much. It's been great having you.
Bye.